Greetings, everyone. We have something unusual for you today. A conversation focused on Bob Dylan. Why? Why would we do that? Just to think about the relationship between Bob Dylan and themes that we've taken up in fire philosophy and themes that are just important for human beings to think about. Dylan's songwriting, which has gone on steadily for it's going on 70 years, follows philosophical themes, religious themes, literary, spiritual, social justice themes. Just to choose one among those themes, one that we've picked up here on Fire Philosophy often is theme of freedom. You could just feel that sense of freedom radiating out of Dylan's songs among his numerous awards, like Nobel Prize, Pulitzer Prize, he won an Oscar, Grammys, is the Presidential Prize for Freedom. So you think, why was he given the Presidential Prize for Freedom? In Dylan's case, not freedom as in the trivial sense, sometimes of the right to do whatever you feel like doing, but more the mature sense of an inner freedom to create and to recreate yourself as you carve out a personal path in life. Some of you will recall that when Bruce Springsteen introduced Dylan into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he said, Dylan freed your mind the way Elvis freed your body. If we try to think cultural influences over the last 60 years, Dylan's time period, can we name anybody who's had a greater influence globally? I struggle with that. I'm not sure I can. All we want to do then is to ruminate on Dylan. We're going to start with the film, but don't want to get stuck there. That's just one moment in the glorious history of Dylanology. But we just want to ruminate on these themes that connect Dylan to what we're doing. So we're joined today, special guest, Steven Heine, very huge, serious Dylan fan. His day job is he's a Zen scholar. He's a professor, expert on Dogen, in my judgment, the world's foremost authority on Dogen, the Soto Zen Master. But he's written on Chinese, Japanese, Zen throughout the entire history of that great tradition. Stephen is a huge Dylan scholar. He has written, I know you've been to Hibbing, right, Steve, many times to check out Dylan's roots. He's thought about the spiritual, religious grounding of Dylan in his Jewish tradition, his conversion and deconversion from Christianity, but also in connection to Zen, the fact that his Dylan lyrics are Zen-like. Everybody can see that who is in Zen. Just listen to Dylan, and it's right there. We're going to just have this be an open conversation. There are four of us, joined by our own Christoph and Malik, who you met before on numerous occasions. And I'm the least expert in the theme of Bob Dylan, although I've been a fan all of my life. But Christoph and I will pose some questions. We'll defer on occasion to Stephen and Malik. And here we go. So let's just start with the movie. Many people out there, you've seen it. Steve, start with you. What'd you think of the movie?
Yeah, I think, many of us, Dylan fans were a little nervous. How are they gonna capture it in a movie? There's been movies about Dylan. Martin Scorsese made a great documentary called No Direction Home, about 20 years ago, and, there was a kind of postmodern take on the multiple aspects of Dylan's identity. Dylan has a recent song, "I Contain Multitudes," and, there was a movie, I'm Not There, in 2007 that had 6 different actors playing different aspects of Dylan's, persona. That was very interesting, but I think that one was a little bit over the heads of the casual Dylan fan. I've been very, gratified that I have a number of friends and former students who texted me and said, "I never quite understood your obsession with Dylan until I saw this movie." So I like the idea that it's, very authentic to Dylan's music, that I think the music is first and forefront, to the era in Greenwich Village, to some of the other characters that interacted with Dylan, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, and Joan Baez, especially. And yet it has a kind of commercial quality because it does tell a linear story. It does tell the narrative. It does highlight some of the drama. They do take poetic license with some of the actual events, but I have learned that Dylan not only approved the script, but he had read it several times. He consulted with the director on numerous occasions. They had some famous conversations over coffee. And so I think it's the message Dylan wanted to put out to the world about the drama that unfolded as he, in those first 4 years, went from being a complete nobody who was just a hanger-on of the folk scene in Greenwich Village to being, an international superstar, and so became so big so quickly that some of his former fans were a little upset or repudiated some of his new directions because he was pursuing that freedom of expression and freedom to make music the way he saw fit, and in the end, that did prevail, and so, the movie shows that he gets booed by some fans who don't want him to play electric music rather than acoustic music, but in the end, if you look at the list of the greatest, albums of all time, it's those very albums that were booed at first that became that are at the top of everybody's list. So I think that the movie does a great job of capturing that complexity and packaging it in a nice story with amazing acting and amazing musical performances.
with each actor singing their own part, which is
Yes. Yes. I read a comment that I think in the Ray Charles biopic, they did, use Ray Charles' original singing, and and in that movie, one reviewer said that's what made it magical. But I think in this case, the fact that they not only had the actors learn guitar, learn banjo, learn how to sing, learn how to do it in the Dylan style or the Joan Baez style, but they also performed it in front of live audiences. So what we see has this feeling of being very dynamic and vigorous. It doesn't feel packaged. And it's just uncanny that it captures the magic of the music. One friend of mine said, and there's a line in the movie, and apparently Dylan approved this, where Joan Baez says, "Dylan, you're an asshole," because he's very cutting, he's very sharp, he says what's on his mind to people, but it doesn't really matter what his personality is. We're not trying to celebrate Bob Dylan's personality. We're trying to celebrate the music that was expressed by it. We don't have to like Picasso or Mozart to appreciate that the art that they made. I think the movie, for kind of a commercial movie that may win some Academy Awards, it's doing good box office in US and in Europe, does capture the spark. That's the phrase that Dylan first used when he met, Woody Guthrie. "I wanna capture the spark," and I think that's what the movie does for us.
terrific. Malik, what's your take?
That covers it pretty well, but I think, everything Steve said, but then there's a moment in the film that I think annoyed some people that I really liked, that I think is a good entryway, which is he's starting to chafe against the folk, authenticity and, ideological demands, and they have him finding, some kind of a goofy whistle, from a street vendor, and then he's, like, in the tub blowing the whistle, and maybe my favorite scene in the movie, even though it's maybe the most ridiculous, in a certain way. Watching like, having that as the sort of entryway into, his irony and his, like, desire to break free and to the sort of the ironic humor, like, Paul Simon's got this famous complaint that Bob Dylan can get away with anything because, you can never tell if he means it or not. Like, he's always got this irony in the way he sings and the way he delivers. That capturing that is so hard to do. Okay. I know they captured some of his humor, some of his cutting and sarcastic comments, and